Thank you very much, Daphne. And thank you, everybody. I am honored and humbled to see so many faces here. I know so many people that made adjustments to your schedule so that you could be here tonight, and nothing could make my heart more happy than to know that you came here just to hear me ramble on for half an hour. Um, my story is definitely one of overcoming and of hope. But it took a lot to get there. My story of addiction has a lot to do with childhood trauma, so I can't get through my story of addiction without talking about that. So please bear with me as I introduce kind of what happened to me as a kid, so that you can understand what path I had to take here. Um, and all of it comes down to dear old dad. My dad was he's passed away. He passed away over 20 years ago. But in life, he was larger than life, and by that I mean he was 6'4", 350 pounds, and built like a brick house. And he unfortunately had a personality that went with that big size. The simplest way to describe him is he was a bully. He bullied everybody, not just his kids and his wife, but total strangers. I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be nothing like him. The way he treated strangers, the way he treated his kids, the way he treated his wife, I wanted nothing to be like him. But as a kid, you still want that attention, you still want that recognition, you still want that fatherly love, whatever. And since he was a very domineering and powerful person, you just didn't question him ever. And so my earliest memory is I know I was less than 6 years old because it was in our first house, and I just remember um, him calling me from the bathroom and yelling at me, "Brad, get in here! Brad, get in here!" Not knowing what was going on. So I remember going to the bathroom. He's in the shower, and he said, "Get in the shower." And I thought it was weird because it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was midday. I don't know, and I had already had a bath, so it just didn't make any sense. And I just remember the fear, the abject fear. I knew I did not want to get in that shower with him. Um, Whatever mental block is going on, the rest of that memory is blocked out. But I know it wasn't good, just because I was always terrified of him in that way. The the most vivid memories that I can have of his kind of sexual assaults were mostly he would just grab you whenever he wanted. And sorry, this is actually my first time ever talking about this outside of therapy, so I'm going to try and get through it pretty quickly. My brother and I used to fight over who got to sit in the back seat, because neither one of us wanted to sit in the front seat next to dad, because he'd just reach over and grab you. And you didn't argue, you didn't fight about it, you just let it happen. When I got a little bit older, and as boys will do, you start to get erections at night, and the way he'd wake me up in the morning, he'd come in and he'd grab hold of that. So I would start to wear tidy whitey underwear to bed underneath my pajamas just to force it down so that he didn't have anything to grab onto. So there's just some examples of kind of his sexual assaults. The fact that he instilled in us the fear of authority, the fear of him, meant that we didn't question authority anywhere. And I know for me, that one thing I need to say is this face wasn't always this kind of ugly. I was called People Puppy as a kid. That was my nickname. Unfortunately, when you're a cute kid, people can predate on you. And so it was also a grade school teacher, and it was a Catholic priest. And I remember the memories I have mostly are of the other adults who were terrified when they knew what was about to happen, but didn't do anything about it. Well, either they couldn't or they wouldn't. So those memories kind of sit with me so strongly that today I still can't belong to a gym and take a shower with other, or even go into a changing room and see other men naked. I can't do it, won't do it. Even if I go into a public restroom, I'll use the stall that you can close the door on. So that's kind of where that all started from. Dad was also emotionally and mentally abusive. My nickname from him growing up was dumb fuck. I could never be smart enough, good enough, whatever. His comment would always be, "You dumb fuck, you're too stupid. You don't know what you're doing." And the frustration that I would feel kept me in fear of ever trying anything new. Never wanted to do anything new, and I was terrible at sports because of it. And I was such a disappointment because he was such a sports person. The next thing with him, and kind of the last thing with him, was the way he treated my mother. When I started to get old enough to pay attention to things, realized how he was treating her, and now in sobriety and in my healing, I realized that mom didn't protect me because mom couldn't protect me, because mom was being tormented the same as her kids were. She was doing her best. But I remember a perfect example that sits with me is sitting at the dinner table one night, and I can't remember what they got into an argument about, but mom gets up and she clears off her dishes and she goes to put them in the sink. And he says, "Brad, you got to join the 4F club." And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Find them, feel them, fuck them, and forget them." And mom gets mad. She throws the dishes in the sink and starts washing the dishes. He goes, "See, that's all they're good for, is fucking and washing the dishes." And that's when mom stormed off and went into her bedroom. And I just remember, you didn't argue with dad. You didn't stick up for anybody. You didn't do anything outside of the ordinary because you didn't want to get yelled at. So I didn't say anything, but I remember swearing to myself that I would never treat a woman the way that dad treats her. Like, just seeing the pain, excuse me, seeing the pain that she was in, even though she was really good at hiding it, I could tell. And I took it upon myself to be the one that cheered her up. I would sit with her for hours playing backgammon or Uno or other games to entertain her, to make her feel better. And so I knew that I never wanted to be like dad. And it got to such a level that when I learned about this thing called the cycle of abuse, that abused children can become abused parents, I swore I'd never have kids. And guess what? I don't have kids. I found a woman that didn't want kids, and we were able to make it work. I swore that the Daroma curse would die with me, that I would not pass on this infected blood that I had running in my veins. Sorry. That's the severity of how I felt about me. And so when I had tasted alcohol before, but I had had sips of beer. And it's not the same thing. You have a sip of beer, it's just some gross tasting cold water with bubbles in it. But when I first had my first drink of hard liquor, and I felt that warming, numbing sensation, I was hooked. I was hooked right away. It was the first time I ever experienced the fact that I didn't have to live with my emotions. I didn't have to live with my feelings. I didn't have to live with this brain that hated me so much, that hated everything about me. So I knew, well, I didn't know. I thought alcohol was safe. I believed it was safe. But I also knew that this numbing sensation was something I wanted. And I thought it was normal. I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. I could fit in with other kids. And so even before high school, I got the nickname of Alky. I would go to parties and I would steal a bottle of liquor from my parents. They had this case of liquor out in the garage that they never knew anything about, that I stole from. And I would drink a bottle of whiskey, an entire bottle by myself, before I went to the party. I mean, I'm not even in high school yet, and I'm already making sure that people don't see me standing in the keg line refilling my beer every 10 seconds because I couldn't get enough alcohol in me. I'm, 13 years old at this time? So I would drink that bottle of whiskey beforehand, and I'm stumbling around, falling over into plants and stuff like that. I thought it was funny. People would laugh about it, whatever. But it got to the point where I would take booze to school with me. I would drink before school, put it in the locker, go back at lunch, drink some more, walking around high school drunk. Other people walked around stoned, so I thought it was all right. I'm drinking alcohol. You guys are the bad ones, smoking dope. You're doing the illegal stuff. That was what gave me a little bit of comfort. What was drinking alcohol, having that notoriety of being the bad boy drinker. That was the cool thing. And like I said, it was the numbing effect that kind of made me feel okay. After high school, I actually kind of mellowed out a little bit on the alcohol. I went into college and decided, okay, I've got to focus on my studies. I want to be an accountant. I'm studying and I'm gonna do real good. And I did. I actually mellowed out on the drinking. I still drank on the weekends, but it wasn't a nightly thing. But the poison in my veins was still there. The mental health was still an issue. And more nights than not, I would still be curled up on the floor next to my bed with a kitchen knife in my hand, wishing I had the courage to do it, wishing I had the courage to kill myself. And the only reason why I didn't was because I didn't want to hurt my mother. I knew how upset she would be, and I couldn't do that to her. So I pushed through somehow. After college was when I met my girlfriend. She became my wife. And we hit it off. We were good friends at first. We worked together. She was a waitress. I was a bartender. Drinking was kind of average, nothing too extreme. It's probably extreme for most normal people, but it wasn't extreme by my standards. And we hit it off. And she had a lot of mental health issues as well, which fit in perfectly for me. Because if you know anything about me, you know that I'm a caretaker. And I will, at the time, I thought I could love the pain out of her. I used to call myself a fixer. I can fix her. Wrong attitude to take, but I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was going to be her white knight. I was going to be her hero. I couldn't save myself, so I might as well try and save somebody else. So we got married shortly after that, and things were great. We moved to San Diego. This is 20 years ago, and again, things were fine, and my career was kicking off. And it was, alcohol was kind of mellow. It was a happy hour thing here and there. It was a nightly thing, but it wasn't too severe. And actually, I forgot to mention what kind of shocked me a little bit back into some normalcy was before we moved to San Diego, my brother got he got pancreatitis, and I remember thinking, wow, I don't think he drinks more than I do. And if you've never heard of pancreatitis, it's pretty severe stuff. You got to be a pretty heavy drinker to get that stuff. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to limit myself to just 3 drinks a day, no more than 3 drinks a day. That was my limit, and I stuck to it pretty good. And so, like I said, career was taking off, and I was doing really good. Then I made a mistake that a person that is an addict should never do. And I left work to go work for myself, which I thought was a great idea. It was a good way to get some freedom and advance my career. But what it also meant was I wasn't really accountable to an office. So that meant that I could drink kind of whenever I wanted. I could take my laptop to the bar and start drinking there and work. Things cycled pretty badly from there. But it was still somewhat, in a kind of a maintenance phase in that I was getting my work done. I was making money. I was paying my bills. I was drinking certainly more than was healthy, but it wasn't anything, it wasn't impacting my life yet. What happened was, though, the economy took a tank. It was this 07, 08. And so all of a sudden my financial security was somewhat gone. And all of a sudden anxiety kicked in. But my dear old friend alcohol was there to keep me comfortable. And he was always there. Alcohol was always there for me. So yeah, I would take my laptop to the bar while I'm, looking for work, scrolling through job applications, but drinking all day long. And I was such a regular at this bar that, that I would be there when they opened. I knew the bartender. They would let me in before they opened. I would sit there with my laptop all day long through 2 shifts. That bartender would leave, new bartender would come in. I'd still be there, and then I'd go home. Um, I would. No one ever told me that it was a problem, but if they tried to tell me, it wouldn't have sunk in. Um, One of my friends had told me that they thought that I had a problem, and that I should probably go see a doctor. And because I'm not much of a doctor person, so I hadn't been in a while, and so went to the doctor and did all the tests and everything. Came, blood pressure. Wow, your blood pressure is really high, so we got to look at that. But they did blood tests, so I went back afterwards. I think a week or so later to get the results of the blood test. Your enzymes are through the roof, and so your good cholesterol is also through the roof. All the markers of this is alcohol abuse. And of course, he asked me how much I drink, and I said, oh, 3 drinks a day. Not even close to that, but that's what I would tell everybody was 3 drinks a day, because they're not going to believe 2, and 4 is too many. So 3 sounds like a good number. To be honest, I have no idea how much I was drinking because it was an all day thing. But anyway, being a doctor, I'm sure he knows. He's seen all the markers. He says, okay, well, let's do this. Why don't you quit drinking for a month? And see how you come back with your test results. Do you think you can do that? I'm like, oh, sure, no problem. I can do that. And I did. I quit drinking for a month, man, white knuckling it. I remember journaling, thinking, oh, God, I feel so good. My memory is getting better. My energy is getting better. I'm sleeping better. I'm happier. And all the things you feel in that first month felt great. I mean, I wasn't working a program. No way. Because AA, that's for weirdos, right? So just white knuckling and doing it on my own. But my eyes were on the calendar. Man, once 30 days are up, I'm going back. No doubt about it. And sure enough, I go back to the doctor, and yeah, absolutely, your enzymes are back, your blood pressure's down, you even lost some weight, everything's good. So yeah, he did the one mistake that I swear a doctor should never do. He gave me kind of the green light. He said, you're probably not a person that I would say could never drink again. Just got to keep it under moderation. Sweet. So you know what that told me? Okay, every once in a while, just quit drinking for a month and just reset the liver. You'll be all right. Unfortunately, that's not the way addiction works. And when I don't have to quit drinking, I don't want to quit drinking. So it was back to the races and drinking again. Within a year is when I got my first bout with pancreatitis. And I couldn't believe. I'm like, oh my God, how am I here? I was so ashamed. Nobody ever knew about this. Never told my mother, never told my brother. My wife was the only one, and maybe 1 or 2 friends were the only ones that I ever let know that this happened to me, because I was so ashamed. I couldn't believe I let this happen to me. And I swore, okay, when I'm out of this hospital, I am just going to just drinking on the weekends only. Again, we've all done this, tried the moderation thing, but I swore this was my wake up call. I'm going to do this time. Within a couple of months, that had broken, but now I don't want to feel the shame of breaking that promise to my wife, so I'm hiding it. So I'd leave work a little bit early so I could rush home, slam a couple drinks before she got home, and that way she doesn't know that I had anything to drink, and I could just sit there and watch a movie with her and go to bed. Well, of course, that works for a little bit, so you push it a little bit more. I'd go to lunch and I'd have drinks at lunch, and it just became more and more and more and more, until that job fell through, and so again, financial security was gone. So again, I didn't tell her about this, but I would make sure I'd leave the house before she did. She would go running, and I would make sure I'd leave the house before she got home, so she'd think I was going to work. I'd fill myself one of those big bottles of a mixed cocktail, and I'd drive to the beach, and I'd sit there at the beach and I'd drink that big cocktail before the bars opened, and then I'd go to the bar and sit there all day, and then I'd make sure I got home before her so that she didn't see me, stumbling in, and I could have a drink in front of me. She'd think, oh, this is one drink of the day. Um, that continued on, and continued to spiral, and I continued to gripe about things to anyone but her, to work on any issues except with her. And I stopped paying bills. My car was repossessed. The cable was turned off. But I would justify everything in my own head. Like, it didn't matter. I don't need this. I don't need that. Utilities were 3 months behind. And 2 weeks before my birthday, she left. And I remember thinking it was a blessing. I'm like, oh, good, she's gone now. I can finally be free. All of her drama issues. Now I could be me and all this good stuff. It was a relief for me, because trust me, at that time everything was someone else's fault. It was the boss's fault. It was the economy's fault. It was the wife's fault. It was never this guy's fault. And I remember, we're getting to the end of the alcohol story. I remember her after she left and thinking I had this freedom now. I was 2 weeks away from I didn't have any income. And I had $12 in my pocket. And I remember I had $12 in my pocket because the store that I would go to, the bottle of vodka, the 1.7 liter bottle of vodka, and the 2-liter bottle of soda would cost $11.68. And I wasn't going to be that hobo that, dumped a bunch of change onto the counter. No, I had a 10 and 2 ones. Oh, here, look, I have perfect change. So I was all good. I had enough for 2 more days of booze. And then 2 weeks later, I was going to be homeless. But none of that mattered. I had enough money for 2 days of booze. That's all I cared about. Before I was able to get to the liquor store, though, I woke up the next morning and I had those pains again. And I knew exactly what it was. I had pancreatitis for a second time. And at this point, I was so ready to die. I actually had a plan of how I was going to do it. I just didn't have the money to do it. I was going to rent a kayak and paddle myself out into the ocean and then cut my wrists and jump in the water. Tie a rock off to my feet and jump in the water. That way nobody would have to find me. That was my plan. But I didn't have enough money to go rent a kayak. So anyway, I wanted to die, but for some reason, I got up off that couch and I drove my ex-wife's old car to the hospital. I still, to this day, can't tell you what happened, what got me off that couch, except for my higher power had a different plan for me. Sitting in that ER, the doctor told me, this is the worst case of pancreatitis I ever saw in my life. He said, if you didn't come into this hospital, you would have died. So when we say our sobriety date very well could have been the date on our tombstone, that is the literal truth for me. I would have died the next day because I was going to keep drinking, but I knew what these pains were. And instead of continuing to drink, I drove myself to the hospital. While in the hospital, I had doctors, nurses, social workers, and friends all telling me, you got to go to rehab. You got to go to rehab. You got to go to rehab. And I'm thinking, no. I just need to go to some AA meetings so I can learn how to moderate, because that's what I thought AA was for, learn how to moderate your drinking. Okay, so no, you got to go to rehab. The only reason why I agreed to go to rehab was because one of the social workers found a way to have my insurance pay for it. I'm broke. I'm going to be homeless in 2 weeks. So this meant 30 days of free room and board. Okay, now I can figure out what I'm going to do. I've got 30 days of time. All right, fine, I'll go. It's the only reason why I went. I had no intention of quitting drinking. No way. And when I got in there, I'm in rehab and I'm looking at all these losers, all these drunks and druggies. Like, you guys are fucked up. You belong here. I don't. I don't have any problem. As I'm standing at the nurse's station shitting my pants because I'm going through such DTs. Like, still, I don't have a problem. You all have a problem. Like, this is the depravity that I was in, but I don't see it. And it wasn't until probably day 3 or 4, I can't remember which, sitting in that group, we do a morning group check-in, and everybody's doing their little check-in. You say a number and you say how you're feeling. And this one guy that's sitting across from me, he says, it's out of 1 out of 5. He says, I'm at a 4 and I'm feeling pretty good. I had a good night's sleep, so I feel all right. And I remember looking at him with just in this feeling of, oh my God, I want that. I want that so bad. I remember, how in the hell does someone sit there and say they're a 4, they had a good night's sleep and feel pretty good? Oh, that was like the holy grail and cheesecake all rolled up into one. It was like, oh, I want that. And then I remember thinking, you are so low that that is what's so desirable, is to feel good and have a good night's sleep. That's when the light went on. That's when I said, okay, I've got a problem. I can never drink again, because that to me was like, dude, you're at the bottom of the barrel. It's time to turn your life around. It's time to take this seriously. And I did. I dug in. I opened my mind up. I listened to everything they said. I even listened to the 12 steps. I saw the GOD up on the wall, and I went, oh my God, you people are going to try and convert me into some weird Catholic thing. Like, no, don't even try that. I've had my experience with that. Don't go churchy on me. But my therapist even told me, hey, this higher power can be anything you want. GOD, call it a group of drunks. And I looked at her like, what are you talking about? She said, when you're sitting in your group, don't you feel a little bit better than when you're sitting by yourself? I said, well, yeah. She said, there's a little strength there, right? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. She goes, well, there you go. That is a power greater than you. Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be like this religious thing. Okay. All right. Mind open, mind blown. Never even thought of this concept. And it started me down this idea of opening my mind and realizing how closed-minded I was. So those two things put together, seeing someone else feeling pretty good, and wanting that so bad, and realizing how bad off I was, and then recognizing that I don't have to buy into some indoctrinated thing that I don't agree with, but just keep my mind open. Like, okay, I can do that. So I went through my 30 days of inpatient rehab, and like I said, I dug in. I learned everything I could possibly learn, man. I was hungry for this information. This idea of being sober was just fantastic. And I remember seeing the sensation I was getting of this newborn feeling, in seeing these magicians, as I'll call them, and what they were doing with me. And like, I wanted to do what they do. I wanted to just be like them. I wanted to give this back to somebody. But I knew, okay, no, that's like some pink cloud shit working. I didn't know what pink cloud meant, but that's kind of where I'm going, is, okay, don't settle down, go back to your accounting job. Don't focus on this, because, you got to stay with what you know. And so I did. When I left rehab, I went back to my accounting job, and I'm like, okay, now I'm sober. Cool. Let's go kick this. And now I can really make money, and I can start earning and start climbing that corporate ladder and all that good stuff. Ready to go. Not working a program, but I don't care. I'm ready to go. No, bad idea. Luckily, I didn't relapse, but I came really close, because the stress and anxiety of this having to go, work, was triggering for me. And I realized how triggering it was. And so I actually took the next year off from working there. I drove for Uber for a year, to just try and make enough money to pay the bills so that I could work on me. And that was such a blessing, because I dug into AA. I went to a group called Big Book Awakenings, where they get deep into the Big Book. Let me tell you, that's some good stuff. You ever want to work the steps really hard, Big Book Awakenings, look it up. That's when I started to hit a little bit of growth, and started to realize the power of working a program. And I know this is an AA meeting, and I'm an AA guy, but I will champion anyone who goes any path of recovery. As long as you're working a program and working the spirituality, working on yourself, man, I'm championing you, because I know what it can do for you. And so the AA way worked for me. And so I dug in and worked with a sponsor, worked the steps, and felt the power of the growth. But it sort of plateaued for me a little bit after 2 years. And I'm thinking, well, that's okay. I started to wane off the meetings and wane off the step work. But then when I hit my 2-year recovery, 2-year sobriety, I posted I was already on Instagram, but all my friends were just all the bartenders and waitresses and drinking buddies that I had back in the day. But it was a big step for me to post my 2-year chip onto Instagram. And I had just heard about this thing called hashtag. So I just hashtagged either sober or 2 years or recovery or something. It was like one hashtag. And I got a ton of likes from people that I had never heard of before. And I'm like, who are these people? One of them was Martha. I don't know if y'all are on Instagram, Martha from Recovering Out Loud. And so I started following her. And then I started following other people on Instagram. And I started realizing this idea of being open about recovery. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't something you stick in a basement? What are you talking about? What is this Recovering Out Loud business? And all of a sudden, I was hooked on that in such a good way that I can talk about my recovery. I can talk about my sobriety. I can talk about the benefits of. I don't have to be ashamed. And my boss already knew that I was in recovery. My close friends already knew that I was in recovery. My mother, my family, they all knew I was in recovery. So who cares if strangers know I'm in recovery, right? So I dug in, and that took me to another level of working the program and recovering and working on mental health. And sorry, I keep checking the clock, make sure I'm not running out of time here. Because now we're getting to some of the good stuff, the stuff that really excites me. And so we're 2.5 years into recovery, and I still feel like I'm kind of plateauing a little bit. I'm making new friends, making new connections, and I remember a friend had commented on one of my posts. I can't even remember what she commented. It was the other Polly too, Paula, who comes in here every once in a while. She paid me a compliment, and I did what I usually do. And they play it off with a joke. I can't remember what I said, but it was like, oh, no, that, maybe she said it was funny. I said, well, maybe I'm funny looking. I'll crack a joke like that to try and deflect. And she called me out on it. And she said, Brad, why do you do that? Why don't you accept a compliment? Because when you deflect that compliment, not only are you disrespecting yourself, you're disrespecting me. Ooh, well, that hurt. It didn't hurt, but it kind of stung like, wow, that's true. So I started doing a self-affirmation journal. And I did 90 days, not straight, but it took me 270 days to do it, but I did 90 entries where I started writing a word. I would meditate on this word about myself and write about it and write about how I feel about me. And so nice was one of the words. Nice, Brad's a nice guy. So I would meditate on how I was a nice guy. And so after 90 days of doing that, 270 days, but 90 entries, all of a sudden I'm like feeling a little more confident about myself, confident enough to where now, okay, I realize work isn't doing so great for me. I'm not really getting anything out of this accounting business anymore. And I've already kind of pulled myself back from that. So what else could I do? I mean, change terrifies me. But now I've got a little self-confidence built up. So, okay, what about going back for my master's degree and pursuing that passion that I felt 3-4 years ago of seeing those people in that rehab place and the work that they did with me? Okay, so I investigated that a little bit. Turns out, hey, student loans, you can do this, you can get a career going. So here I am, a year into my master's program, becoming a substance abuse counselor, and tucking my tail between my legs in a couple months, I'll probably move back in with mom so that I can afford to do a practicum, which is an internship. They don't pay you while you're doing this. And so that I can follow my passion of helping other people, because nothing makes me feel of more value than helping other people. And I came to the realization that if a job is just a paycheck for me, I might as well love what it is I'm doing. I'm single and no kids, so it's just me, and I have no one to let down. I have no one to build up, just me. So the beauty is that I was able to work through all of this and come to a realization that I have found a passion. I have found healing. I've even found forgiveness for my dad. Like I said, he passed away over 20 years ago, but I've since passed on forgiveness to him for what he did. One of the things my sponsor had told me was, these things were horrible, and yeah, your dad was a bully, but that didn't mean he didn't love you. It just means he only knew how that way to love you. He was probably acting out of his own wounds. That doesn't make it okay. by any means, but it certainly gave me the freedom to let it go. Because holding on to resentments of what he did was only burning me inside. It was only holding me back, and it was only making the pain last even longer. The pain existed; it's still there, but a lot less so, and it sure as hell doesn't control me. So forgiveness was absolutely crucial, and gaining some self-confidence was absolutely crucial. And none of that would have been possible without all of the help that I received, whether it was the ER doctor, the social workers, the people in rehab, my friends at the time, my wife for leaving me because it shocked me into extra drinking, so it shocked me into where I needed to go. But most of all, my higher power. Nothing would have been possible without that. And that's pretty much it. That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Oh my God. You are so incredible.